My name is James Tedrick. With me is Brandon Armstrong. We're both on the Survey123 team. Today, we're going to cover a few different topics. First, we're going to start with what's new within the Survey123 website. Then, we'll talk about some of the new features we've introduced into the Survey123 Field app. We'll then also talk about some of the integration we've done to integrate your Survey123 data workflows with other enterprise systems. And then finally, we'll give you a little bit of a sneak preview of what's next for Survey123. So with that, I'll pass it over to Brandon, who's going to cover what's new in the Survey123 website.
All right, thanks, James. So let's start by hopping over to the Survey123 website, and we'll go ahead and pull up the web designer for a particular survey, a tree inspection survey here. For those that aren't familiar, the web designer is where we can design, publish, and manage some of our surveys within the website. So let's take a look at this form, which again is being used for tree inspections. We can assume that this survey was created about a year ago, and now we are returning to the web designer to see what we can do to update the survey or new things that we can apply to this particular design. The first thing to notice is that we have new question types. So for instance here, we have a date time question which previously wasn't available. So if I click on this question, or rather drag it over to the top, we can see that now I can place both a date and time question on the same row. So this is saving real estate, which previously would have required two vertical questions on top of each other. So let me go ahead and rename this question here, and we'll rename it inspection date. And this is simply to gather, again, the inspection date and time for when this survey was taken. In addition, something that we want to implement is to automatically collect the submission date and time. So now it no longer is required for the survey submitter to go in and manually enter this data. It's going to be automatically captured at the time that they open the survey and submit it. So this ensures that we're getting quality data and making sure that we don't have to go in and validate afterwards. Now, before we get into some of the other question types that we've added, let's go and look at what this survey is actually asking for. So again, it's a tree inspection survey, so we have some basic primary information related to the tree. We have our inspection date, the name of the surveyor, the location of the tree, species of tree, a photo of the tree, and then the condition that the tree is in. Now, from here, we're kind of breaking up into a subcategory of a condition. So we see, are we asking for an infestation and disease? That may not apply if we have a good tree or excellent tree. So it's getting into, again, a subcategory. Is it a hazard? Maybe a photo of the hazard, so on and so forth, until we get to a third grouping of questions related to measurements of the tree or properties of the tree. So diameters, dimensions that, again, are telling us about the specific tree. And then we have, again, another group of questions pertaining to what is surrounding this tree. So is it by tall buildings? Is it in a protected area? So on and so forth. Previously, we didn't necessarily have a way within the web designer to separate these questions. So it meant that you would have had to scroll down this survey, not knowing sometimes as the surveyor when it was going to end. Now we have the ability to actually add in a group question type to group our questions. So let me, again, go down to where we noticed that there was a natural break in questions. And I'll go ahead and drag this page into the survey. And I'm sorry, I'm actually going to rather go back and use our groups instead of pages. 1 second here. Pages are also a method that we can use, but we'll get into that in a moment. One second. I'm going to do a quick refresh here. Bear with me. Pages are cool too, though. We will look at them. Okay, so again, we want to add a group. So I'll come back in, drag my group, and place it here. And now we can simply select our questions and drag them into the group. But before that, let's ask for condition details. And now I'll drag all my questions pertaining to the condition into this group. We can see it's as easy as a drag and drop. And now we've gotten into questions asking about the property, so we won't drag those into the group. And let's take a look right now at the preview window to see how our survey would look if we loaded it within the web app, or also if we loaded it on a phone, so on and so forth. So naturally now we have our group set up. After asking for the condition, we have a subcategory. And then we have some of our other groupings of questions which we can add and put into groups as well. If I want to see how it would look on a phone, I'm able to do that as well as a tablet. So let's go back one more time and we'll place our other sections of groups or sections of questions into a group as well. One more here for tree properties. And then a final group for the surrounding area. And our final group here for surrounding area. All right. Now the real power in groups is actually the ability to hide sections of groups or sections of questions at a group level, meaning don't show me this group of questions unless a particular answer is given. So as we saw in our survey, we have a question asking the condition of the tree. So let's see how we can apply a rule at the group level. So I don't want to see these, I don't expect answers to be given related to the tree condition or the subcategory questions unless there is a tree with the status of poor. So I'll click on my condition question, select the option to set a rule, and I'll state if the tree is in condition of poor, then show me my group, which again are the condition details. I'll select OK there. And now let's take a look at the preview one more time. And we can begin to see how groups are useful for managing, again, the real estate within your survey, saving space and time for both the submitter and then not collecting information that you don't need. Network issue. All right. One more thing here. Just how we planned it. Oh, no. Didn't save. Okay, and we'll just add our one group again just to get an idea. So let me come back, add my group. So I really want to show you guys how these rules work with groups. And I'll come back up to my condition and throw my questions in here. And let me again say condition details. We'll make sure to save. This is all because we wanted to show you guys we have the ability to save the design. And then I'll, again, set a rule. When condition of poor, show me the group. Select OK there. Save again. And now let's go ahead and preview how this will work within our survey. Okay, so we don't see right now any condition details. The group that of questions that we put into condition details, we didn't see it unless we select poor. If it's a condition of fair, we're not interested in those details because nothing needs to be followed up. There doesn't need to be any more information given. Likewise for good or excellent. So only when condition of poor, then I want to see these questions and I want the information related to it. So in addition to groups, we can also use pages. So pages are another method of breaking up your survey into sections. So in the survey here, the same tree inspection survey, we can see how in the web designer, we've split this up into pages. And you can see an actual discernible page break where we've dragged our questions into pages. Now, if we look at a preview of this survey, we can tell that the survey submitter is only given those set of questions defined by the page that they were on. So starting with page 1, again, we're just asking for the primary information. When they fill that out, they can come to the next page and they're asked for the condition information. So we can see here, next set of questions, and finally, questions pertaining to the surrounding area. So these are very powerful questions, again, between the date, time, the groups, and also the pages. These are absolutely questions that you should utilize in the web designer and should enhance your ability to create surveys with the web designer. All right, so now we can get into another enhancement that we made within the web designer, which is the ability to apply a custom theme to your survey. So let's say oftentimes within your organization, there are many people that have access to creating surveys, but you want to standardize a particular look and feel. With these custom themes, we're now able to hold a theme that maybe needs to be applied to every survey that's created within the organization. Everybody, I'm sure, thinks they have great design ideas, but oftentimes that can lead to some pretty, I won't say ugly surveys, but others may not like it too much. So let's go into the settings of our themes here and see how we can apply it. And that's within the Appearance tab. Now we've already added a few other themes pre-designed for you that you can select from. So if you wanted a pink survey, feel free to select that one. We have our browns. We even have pictures that can be applied to the background and also the surrounding area. But what we're most interested in is this new ability to apply, again, a theme that was created for a previously designed survey within your organization. So I'm going to select the option here, theme from existing survey. Sorry, first I'll go choose from a survey. And now I want to search for a survey within my organization. So I know in this case that it's a survey related to trees. So I can see that I have several options, one being the oak tree health survey. This one looks good, but again, it's not the one that I necessarily want to apply. So I'll go to another, which I see here, which is the tree inspection with theme. So again, this is from a previously created survey within my organization and was designed by somebody else within the organization, but I can apply this now to my survey, giving the look and feel or standardizing for a particular tree survey. So after I apply these custom themes, let's say I'm now ready to publish and I'm ready to get my survey out there. Another enhancement that we made, which was very frustrating in the past, we now actually name your questions for you based upon the label. So no longer will you see field 1, field 2, field 3, or choice 1, choice 2, choice 3. I see some claps going on there. Yeah, so this was a very big one. Happy that you guys enjoy it, but now we can actually, again, apply the label to the actual field name on the back end. And we'll go ahead and publish this survey out. So after we published our survey, we also can apply other methods of viewing the actual web app. So let me show now how we can launch a web app with fields already populated and apply URL parameters to our survey. So how many people have wanted the ability to select a record, have a form pull up or a survey pull up, and have certain fields that already exist in that feature come through to the survey? All right, awesome. So we do have the ability to do that from your web map, from your web app, or just web mapping apps in general. Now we can have you select those records and have the values pull through automatically to the form. So oftentimes we don't want to waste the time of somebody having to fill it out, and also it ensures that the data is coming through as needed. So let's go back to a web app that I have here. And this is a tree data set again, and we can see that it's symbolized based on conditions of the tree. So we have trees in status of good that are green, and we have ones in poor health that are red. So if I select this within my web app, I'm now brought to a pop-up in which I can select tree inspection, and from here, it launches my survey within the web app. So pretty cool. I'm already getting my survey launched within the web app, but in addition, you can see that it's passing through values. So for instance, the tree species already says oak. The condition is poor. Now, if we look at this closer, in the URL, we're seeing a structure that's been applied. And these are parameters. So let me go back quickly here, and let's take a closer look at how this is split up within the URL. So there's 3 discernible sections, one being the URL, the survey123.arcgis.com/share. You guys are probably familiar with this. And then we're pulling the unique item ID of the survey, so the form item ID. And then we're passing through parameters related to field values. And these are separated, in this case, starting with the question mark, specifying the field, which in this slide is submitted by, and then we're giving a name of Stephen. So if we go back to our web app and take a look, we can see in ours, we've given the field name of condition, and it's stating that the condition is poor, and we can see that reflected here within our web app. In addition, the field of tree species is oak. Now these are dynamically also, there's the ability to dynamically pull these values. So these were existing values within my feature service. It's pulling those values and populating into the web app. We can also apply additional parameters. So let's say it's not necessary to collect, or rather for the survey submitter to see the inspection date. Since we know that it's automatically being collected because we specified when we were designing the survey, we can hide this inspection date. So here we can use a hide parameter, which will say and hide. And then we'll say field, and 1 second here. And okay, and hide equals field, and then it's going to be inspection date. Because our field name for the inspection date, again, was inspection_date. And now we apply some magic, and we no longer see the inspection date. So it's hidden, the values are still being collected, but the survey submitter is not actually seeing that question. It's being taken on the back end. Okay, and with that, I think I'd like to turn it back to James.
Thank you, Brandon. So we've seen what we can do with the website. Create groups, create pages, be able to alter the theme, and be able to have finer control over the web form. Now we're going to transition over to what's new with the ArcGIS Field app. The first new feature that we want to talk about is support for direct connection to GNSS receivers. This has been a request many of you have asked for, and we're pleased that with the 3.3 version, we've provided it for you. So, GNSS device, direct device connection helps us with our collection activities in a few different ways. First, we need this in order to support high accuracy collection. Second, and related to that, we need to be able to store the metadata that you're receiving from the receivers, so that we can then analyze the collection activities and how well they met our objectives. Third, we can do that analysis now while we're in the field. We can make a warning or a constraint based on the status of our collection. Here you see a yellow warning that we have met the absolute requirement, which in this case is 10 meters, but we haven't met a warning value of 5 meters. So while we technically could allow this submission, we alert the user that they could possibly do better. Right? So we're taking all of that collection metadata that you normally have to review back once you drive out from the field to your office, and then allow you to realize if your collection data is good enough while you're in the field. You don't have to drive back out if you did a bad collection run. You know right then if you have your data. So looking at the location settings there in the settings panel of Survey123, and as part of that we can set the location provider and also set in additional information. For example, if we've mounted the GPS on a pole, we can set the antenna height. We can set custom altitude offsets. Adding provider is pretty simple. Most people have GPS devices now that have Bluetooth support. So all we have to do is connect over Bluetooth. For other collection scenarios, such as using real-time kinetic or other correctional information, we actually work with the GNSS provider's app to subscribe to the device, to the location information via the application using a network connection. This also can be the situation you'd see in some of the integrated field computer devices where the GPS is already built into the device itself. If this was a Windows device, we'd also have the option to connect over USB, the classic little GPS mouse tail that we remember back when there were COM ports. Some of us remember there were COM ports. Once we have a direct connection, we're receiving a lot of additional metadata. You know, we get, of course, the latitude and longitude. Depending on the device, we'll receive various types of accuracy information, either RMS accuracy or dilution of precision information. Additionally, we may receive things such as speed, direction, custom magnetic variation. We also can, as we said, define the antenna height as well as the custom geoid separation. That actually can be brought in as well. These are all pieces of metadata that we can work up with from the point. How do we get that information? So we get that information using the pull data function. How many people here have used pull data in some fashion? Okay, a few people. So let me introduce it. Pull data is a function that is our external resource integration function. It started off as, let me read data from a CSV file. And so I enter in an ID, I look up the asset information, the make, model, type from a CSV file that accompanies a survey. We then extended that to work with the location information, initially just with getting the X, Y, Z, and horizontal accuracy. In that same pattern, we've added in all of that metadata from the previous page as keywords that we can look up. We've also extended it, and I'll talk about this a little bit later in a slight more depth. We've also introduced the ability to specify a coordinate conversion, being able to take our location and spit out a USNG, a UTM, or a custom degree minutes seconds based format. We also can use that. We also can take the location and do a reverse geocode on that. So we have our location. We can then get our street address or our zip code or the nearest point of interest based on our location. As I mentioned, we can put in validation rules for the point that will prevent us from capturing a point if we don't meet those conditions. We also have introduced a new warning column that allows us to provide information that while it may technically be acceptable, it is not ideal. We can implement these in a few different areas. Within the XLS form spec, there has already been support for an accuracy threshold. A simple, is my accuracy low enough to submit? We also have a constraint field. The constraint field works on other questions, like a text question, checking for an email format. If I don't have an @ sign, it'll say this is an email address. We can use that with a geopoint question, so that if the point question, if the accuracy is greater than 10, we raise an error. Or if our speed is greater than a meter per second, we're going too fast for a collection. Or the number of satellites in use in our GPS receiver is under 6. We can prevent collection, right? Again, any of those metadata pieces, we can bring in to our business validation. Again, we also have that warning so that we can provide that guidance as well. Because we know that we don't have ideal circumstances all the time, so we may want to have something that allows the user to know that this isn't great, but it's good enough. Taking a look at this. So this is a collection that I did out as a demonstration. You can see that we'll connect to the receiver. And you can see the little icon there. We've introduced this little satellite icon so that you know the status of your GPS connection. You can see I'm moving too fast for a reading. I'm walking. In this case, there's a constraint that the speed must be under 0.45 meters per second, translates to about a mile per hour. Once I collect and I'm still, you can see that I have an acceptable point, and then we can go through and take a look. You can see that I'm connected to an external device, and that it's a bad elf. We can go through, take a look at the coordinates. That's the information that we're receiving. Speed and direction, I'm going at 0.125 at my last reading, and so on. So again, we can pull all this information into our form, and based on that, make intelligent decisions about what our point collection represents with regards to data quality. A couple of things to think about. In particular, on iOS, you probably have heard this in other contexts, but Apple is a little controlling of apps. So we have to work with the GPS manufacturers to get our application whitelisted to use their devices. And additionally, their devices have to be certified as made for iPhone. Currently, we have support for Bad Elf, EOS, SX Blue, and Leica devices. And we are working with other manufacturers to add to that list. Android and Windows, much easier. So long as it's outputting a NEMA sentence, we should be able to read the data. Many people, especially in the US government, have requirements to do a 95% confidence interval collection. In order to provide that 95% confidence interval on the accuracy, you're actually going to apply a multiplier to the RMS accuracy. That we provide the documentation. I'm just noting this here so that you're aware. Also, the reported errors, either RMS or dilution of precision, will vary from device to device, or from manufacturer device to manufacturer device. So keep that in mind as you sort of evaluate which GPS device to use. The exact numbers may not be completely equivalent, from one manufacturer from another. And finally, Survey123 has had support for storing 3D points. You just need to set the field type to an Esri point Z, 3D, Z, in your form when you publish. A couple other things. I just touched on geocoding and coordinate lookup. So we have introduced into the map screen a geocoding, there it goes, a geocoding box. So I can type in an address, such as 500 E Street. There it goes. Look at the series of results, both in the list here as well as on the map. Select the appropriate result, and then set that as my point inside Survey123. And then from there, we can also, as I mentioned, transform the coordinates, supporting USNG, MGRS, which is very closely related, UTM, which is the system that both of those are built on, as well as various degree formats. For example, in our conversations with people, we found out that the aviation community uses degrees decimal minutes, which is, to me, a fairly unusual one, but we can easily bring that in. We also, as I say, can do reverse geocoding. We can take the point and request a reverse geocode. This, again, is using a geocoding service, so this works only while we're on an online context. And by default, we're going to use the ArcGIS Online World Geocoder, so you would need to be logged in. Though in the form, you can actually specify the geocoding service that you want to use. Another feature that we introduced is support for more complex forms via nested table support. So we found that, especially when we're having people go and inspect, for example, large sites, that they'll find information about, say, a park, and then they have to provide information about a facility in the park, say a playground or an athletic field. And then if it's an athletic field, they may need to talk about the goalposts or the baseball diamond patch, right? We're getting down into the weeds on individual items, and then we need to finally have an inspection for that. So we're creating complex data structures. The park, the fields that are related to the park, the inspection of the fields that are related to the park. Survey123 now can support these types of complex nested, what we call nested repeat scenarios, repeat sections that are within repeat sections. Final thing that we wanted to introduce, and this again what came with our latest release last week, is support for the point-to-point measurement function in Spike. We introduced support for Spike at this conference last year, being able to take a photograph and measure the distance to the center of that photograph, or measure an area or length within that photograph. The third measurement system is point-to-point, being able to literally take a photo here, and then move the phone over, take a photo there, and get the distance between the 2 points. So you're seeing it here, you saw it here using left to right. This also works up to down. So for example, with these palm trees here, if we wanted to measure their height, we don't need to get a cherry picker. Now I'm going to transition over to Brandon, who's going to show us how we can integrate Survey123 submissions with other enterprise systems.
All right. So how many people have wanted to receive or send an email when a survey is sent? Awesome. So we just have, it's been for a couple months now, but we've integrated with a series of third-party providers an ability to set into action items after a survey has been submitted. So think of, again, survey has been submitted, a supervisor needs to get an email stating that the survey is submitted and a follow-up action needs to take place. Or sometimes you want to know that a survey is submitted only in a particular condition. So in our tree inspection, for instance, only send an email when a status of poor has been submitted via the survey. So again, we have the ability now through third-party providers to instantiate these actions. Some of the things that we can do are send an email, add a row, let's say, to a Google document. We can post up to social media and we can do several actions that require no code. Now, providers that we've integrated with already include Microsoft Flow, as well as Integromat. And I'd like to show you Integromat specifically, how we now have a Survey123 connector that makes things easier to set these things into action. So let me pull this up, and let's actually start by navigating to Integromat itself. Now this, again, is a program that allows us to integrate with Survey123 and set these actions into item. So I'm gonna go to integromat.com. You can create a free account, and with that, you can create scenarios, which then allow you to put these actions into place. In our case, we have several already set up, so I'll go to a scenario. And in my case, I have a tree inspection scenario here. And what this is doing is stating when my survey is sent, I want it to gather the information from the survey, including my attachments, and send it via email to a supervisor. I've also stated that I only want it to be sent if there is a status of poor for my tree condition. So let's see this in action. I'll go ahead here. And now it's listening for my survey to be sent. We can see that in Integromat. It's listening, waiting for a survey to be sent. So we'll go to our survey here. Let's put in my name. And we'll select our location. It knows that we're in, well, let's see if we get it. We're in Palm Springs here. Okay, we have this species of oak. And I'll be the tree this time. Status of poor, because we want the email to be sent. And now fill out the rest of our survey here. Okay, and I'm gonna go ahead and submit this survey. Now if I come back into my Gmail account, let's see if we receive an email related to the survey. There we go. Already in our inbox, that survey was sent and we received an email via our Gmail account. So I can now open this up and we have in here, oak tree with poor condition has been reported. Please contact myself. And we have additional details related to the inspection date, which remember, we had hidden within the web app itself. We didn't expose that, but it still collected that information. It's giving us that it's a condition of poor, and then an email address, which was actually taken from the logged in user during the submission. So all this stuff taking place on the back end, nobody's necessarily seeing it when they're submitting their survey, but yet you're getting additional information back. Again, it doesn't just stop at sending an email. We can do things like calling out to Google Vision, for instance, taking the picture that we took, identifying objects within that picture. So maybe it is the picture of me, it notices that I'm smiling, and within there I can pull out those attributes and write them to fields within my survey. Pretty powerful to think that, to utilize all of these separate applications within Survey123 itself and to integrate. But this is the basic approach to using webhooks with Survey123. And I definitely want to encourage everybody to come tomorrow. We have a session dedicated to webhooks. That'll be at 9 a.m., 9 to 9:30 in that case. And James will show you exactly the details at the end of this presentation as well. All right. Pass this back over to James.
Thank you. So we've just shown you some of the major new features. Oh. There we go. So we just showed you some of the major new features that we brought into Survey123 over the past year. Now we want to talk about a few things that we're working on for the next versions of Survey123. First, I also wanted to mention that we have a very active early adopter community. So you can sign up. We have an open beta to the Survey123 early adopter community, where we'll post as we develop it, new versions of the application to test out and provide documentation on the new features. So for example, Brandon talked about the Integramat connector. That's currently in beta. We're getting close to finishing it. And you can see that we have an entry right here for that. We have many other things, and I'll talk about several of them that we're bringing in. A couple of things that we're enhancing in terms of form design. There are one request that we've had is to be able to support more complex form layouts. So we're doing this within based on the XLS form spec, which has a layout engine called ThemeGrid. With that, we define a group of questions that becomes a row. And so we're able then to lay these out horizontally using, as you can see here, equal spacing, mixed spacing, basically allocating table cells as we go through. We also have brought in a new question type that enhances the way we work with choice lists. So in choice lists you're probably familiar with. They're a pick list that we can select one. We may put it into a drop down. We may have it as an autocomplete or as a Likert row-based question. Well, we can also have a pick list that's based on an image. So I can just click here and here and here to note the damage of where my car was. So this is using a vector graphic as our interface to a pick list. This is just a multiple choice question with what's called an SVG file to serve as the graphic and the interface for the user. This can work with diagrams, as you see. There's also a great resource to get maps. So which state are you from, for example? Be able to work with more intuitive ways than saying, passenger front bumper, or just click on it. Some other things that we are currently working on include polygon and line support. This is probably the #1 feature that we have in the ideas section. And we've heard from many of you asking for this. So it's currently in beta. You have to modify your Excel sheets a little bit in order to be able to bring it in. Again, we talk about that in the early adopter community. We're going through a phase, we're currently in beta, and we want to get your feedback. Which tools are you going to want to use to collect? What interface do you think works best in terms of being able to, say, modify vertices? I encourage you to take a look at what we currently have, play with it, tell us what we're doing wrong, and we'll try to make it better. To support this, we're actually doing a holistic on campus on Redlands in a couple of weeks. If you're in the Survey123 holistic list, or I actually asked, hopefully, if you're in the collector holistic list, you hopefully have received notification of it. If you're able to attend, we'd love to invite you over. We also have been working on a feature report system. Many of you have probably seen this and used this already. You can create a template document in Microsoft Word, select a feature you want, and then generate a nicely formatted output based on that. This has been in beta for a long time, for a while, and we are getting very close to releasing. We're planning to release at the users conference. As part of that release, we will be transitioning to a credit consuming activity. So this will now be a credit charge per document. We also have provided information on the API that this uses, so that you can integrate this in your own applications or work with it with feature data that isn't Survey123. Many of you have also been asking for an on-premises installation of Survey123 website. Some of you have been able to use the Survey123 website already with your existing ArcGIS enterprise systems through a configuration parameter. However, between being in a disconnected environment without internet access, needing to create and modify forms out in the field, many of you want to be able to do everything on your own machines. So we're working on that. Currently, it's in beta again. and you're free to try it. It does require you to have some IT experience in terms of installing some prerequisite packages. We will be making this a one-click installer as part of the released feature. The final, not quite the final, one of the other important things that we're working on is an extensibility framework. Being able to bring in a little bit extra of your business logic as an add-in and modify how the Survey123 application acts. So for example, this is a design that we worked up with a customer where they wanted to have primarily a map interface and then be able to automatically calculate an ID based on their business criteria that would then populate the survey. We're going to be talking about this in more detail tomorrow. Tomorrow at 5:30 in the Pasadena, Ventura, Sierra, apparently it's an everything room, as a technical workshop. Elvin here will be leading that. So if you're interested in customizing Survey123 without needing to publish a full application, definitely encourage you to come and attend. Finally, I wanted to make a mention about something that we've released. So with the 3.3 release in the website, you can look through your own survey data, delete the data, and also, in some instances, edit the information. That's the first step to providing editing in the web forms. So the web form that you have right now, which only can submit, will be able to, through one of those URL parameters that Brandon mentioned, set it in to edit a particular feature. Again, we're introducing this in a few stages. Partly, we want to make sure that we can preserve data as we load it in, so that we don't make unintended edits going out. So, despite this being the last session on Wednesday, this is actually the first Survey123 session. We have a jam-packed tomorrow. Brandon mentioned that we're kicking off with workflow automation with Survey123 at Demo Theater 2, which is the demo theater by the apps booth, at 9 o'clock. We have our Survey123 SIG at noon. This is a bring your own lunch, so please feel free to go out, grab what I'm going to guess are It's a Wrap wraps, because that's been the pattern for the past few years, and come and join us and geek out about Survey123. We've got a great presentation from the Imperial Irrigation District on how they're using Survey123 to meet their workflows. After that, we're happy to have a whole bunch of questions, answers, and other frivolity. As I also mentioned, we have the Extending Survey123 session at 5:30, just a bit further down that way. And then also I wanted to note the ArcGIS mobile apps, the Road Ahead session, covering not only Survey123, but the rest of our mobile applications. That's at 2:30 in the Primrose B room, which is over by the expo area. Hopefully, I've seen some of you take a photo. This links out to our GeoNet blog that will let you provide all of this information again. So just as a reminder, Survey123's website is where you can get started with everything that you've seen. If you need help, resources, please ask a question on GeoNet. We are very active. We're mildly proud that at this point we're the #2 group on GeoNet, only behind Web App Builder widgets. We're not in competition. We're just #2, and we'd like to change that. We also have extensive help documentation to help you create forms. We have a brand new resource center that is going to that lets you get started pretty easily, and about 24 tutorial videos. We're back in creating more of these on our YouTube playlist in the ArcGIS channel. With that, I guess I have to remind you to use this other survey thing to tell us how our session is. And happy to take your questions. Thank you. Yeah.
What activity is going to start consuming credits again?
So the question is, what activity is going to start consuming credits? I'm going to separate this from the speaker before I blow it out. That is the feature report functionality. The functionality that where we can create a printable document based on a template and selecting a feature. So go ahead.
Per report?
So,
per export?
So yeah, the current model that we are looking at is charging a set number of credits per Word document created. Yes.
Survey123, that part is called polygon line. It's only canvas. It's not we convert this to a feature.
So the question about the polygon and line collection is that actually going to send a polygon or line feature into the record? Is that the question?
For example, where the field ground area to notify something, for example. So I can convert this for I don't know features, shape files, something. Not only take with the canvas.
I'm sorry, I'm not quite getting the question.
Can we get the attributes of the vertices of the polygon? And then all the metadata that comes with the Lima stream as well.
So are we talking about like if we're collecting a polygon using GNSS, can we collect them? Are we collecting the metadata for each point along the vertex? Is that the question? Okay, so that would depend on how you set up the form. For that sort of scenario, we would suggest having your points as a repeat, collecting your vertices as points inside a repeat, and then we can store the data in that repeat. And part of what and one of the ways that we can create a polygon would be to basically sum up the points. So we can construct a point or a line from a sequence of points. We construct a polygon or line from a sequence of points.
That's after the fact.
It's as you're doing it in the form.
So then will I be able to edit the polygon then?
So the question that came up after that is, if I have my polygon be created by doing a sequence of points, say in a repeat, could I then go in and edit the polygon? Yes, you could edit the polygon, just like you could edit anything else that is calculated as a value. You just would lose, you just sort of lose the connection to those points, and you'd need to reset that if you want to restore that connection. Yes?
Do those Word template reports only work for just a single record, or do you summarize data and so on?
So the question is, the feature report functionality, is that only to produce a document based on a single record, or could it, say, get the average values of 10 records, to create a summary report? So it is designed to do to create one document per record. The workflow that we're helping support are things like being able to create automated mailing letters based on the survey submission. We're not looking to create statistics based on several at the time. That being said, we do support that one-by-one creation as well as bulk support, being able to create multiple Word documents, based on a selection set at the same time, so that you don't have to do one. Yes.
Referring to the GNSS, can I use position or the proximity to location as a condition?
So the question is, with GNSS, could I create a constraint that is revolved around, that is concerned about position of perhaps an existing collection or existing point that you have, correct?
Oh yeah, it's just like the geofencing condition.
So geofencing condition. So you can do that already. The biggest trick would be where are you getting your reference information for that? So you can do if you have an X and Y point that loads into the form as like a hidden question, we could run a distance calculation based on our GPS point and then see if that meets the criteria, yes. Yes?
Is there any potential in the future for the pull data function to pull information from like a reference feature layer?
So the question is there any enhancement around the pull data function instead of working with a CSV file, working, say, with a feature layer to look up information? So the answer is yes. We do have in beta the ability to use some custom JavaScript to do a custom function, essentially. One of those functions could be querying a feature layer. And in fact, in the beta community, you'll see an example that's doing a point in polygon layer. Based on my point location, which county am I in, or which township am I in? So that could just be all that is doing is working with the REST API of the feature layer. So you just need to change your query parameters around in order to go from a locational query to a attribute lookup query. Yes, sir?
The GNSS interface validation, can you set your position accuracy, like the ArcGIS?
So the question is, can I, with GNSS parameters, could I set my constraint condition to, say, always require a real-time collection, a real-time kinetic correction? Yes. Yeah. So the answer is yes. One of the attributes that we can look at is the connection mode. It's not connection mode. It's I'm getting the term. Fixed type. Thank you. The fixed type, and that has a value of RTK if it's RTK.
All right. Awesome.
And then yes.
You mentioned feature extraction in photos.
Mm-hmm.
What about, for instance, street signs? Can you describe the level of detail? What kind of attributes can you extract from that?
Sure. So this gets back to the webhook demonstration that Brandon talked about. And this would actually be a good thing to go to the demo theater tomorrow, because we will actually be covering a couple of different scenarios with regards to feature extraction. This is the demo theater at 9 o'clock in demo theater 2. The workflow integration or workflow automation with Survey123. With regards to the feature extraction, for that, we are actually relying on a third-party system. In one case, it was Google Vision, and the other case is Azure's image processing, if my memory serves. Yeah. What we get back is dependent on what those systems would get back. So you would probably end up playing around with one or the other system to make sure you understand the type of data you would get back and whether it meets your criteria. Yes.
Who is the consumer of the report? Is it the person submitting the survey, or is it more for kind of the back office?
So the question is, who is the consumer of the report? Person submitting the survey or back office? We would normally see that role being a back office person, and again, the reasons or use cases that we created this system for are things like automated mailings. After say somebody did a building inspection and found a violation, they need to then proceed print that out, create a printable report to mail back. That being said, it could be the user there, because we talked about this. We can have that as part of a webhook procedure. So I submit the form. If there's a violation, I run the print, and then I get the Word document that I could then, if I've got a printer locally, print out on and hand deliver right then. The other, one of the other use cases that we had with that was also just creating a paper archive. We're in a semi-digital world at this point. There are a lot of legal requirements to have a hard copy as the legal document, as the legal official document. Yes.
The date time field?
Yes.
Can that be triggered by answering a certain question or?
So can the date time field be triggered by the answering a certain question or the submitting time, as opposed to the opening time? So via Survey123 Connect, we can actually do that. We actually have a question called end that lets us record the end time of a survey. We also could have a relevancy calculation or a calculation that if a question is answered, calculate now, get my current timestamp, right? And if not, don't give me anything. So those can be done via the XLS form standard. And in the back.
Is there a release date estimate for the Polygon and line sport?
Is there a release date estimate for Polygon Line Sport? Yes, we are planning for that to be released with our UC release. So for us, that's essentially 2 release cycles from now. That being said, of course, things are subject to change depending on things that happen.
And for the image map?
For image map, that's a good question. We're still working that one out a little bit, mainly because we're trying to determine if we want to have support for it on the web as well as the field app. We normally like to have both. So if we need to have support for the web, and currently we only have it developed on the field app, so we don't quite have a timeline there. If we only want to do the field app, we probably could do it with our next release. Otherwise, we need to figure out the timing to bring it into the web form as well. The grid theme's in the same bucket in terms of we have support there. Probably we still have a few issues around the grid form theme, so it would be something that probably that may not be able to make our next release if we were to do that. But again, our preference would ideally be have it available on both the web and the field app at the same time. The grid form especially is really beneficial in the web context, or as well as in the tablet context, which is one of the use cases that we have for it. With that, I'm going to thank the last 6 of you for sticking it through. I'm sorry I don't have any spoiler teasers.